contemplate the disastrous scenario of a EUROXX, a lot of insurance companies will not insure foreign companies who want to sell on credit to Greece. Imagine what will happen when you also have the layer of the currency risk. This would lead, obviously, to lack of imports of very basic goods. We are not a country which is self-sufficient, as some of the other panelists mentioned before. A return to the drachma, a weakened drachma, will also result in a fire sale of Greek assets. A lot of vultures, whether local or foreign, will take advantage to take and buy for a pittance banks, real estate. You can think of whatever you want. But I think businessmen don't only care about the economic consequences, because we are, as businessmen, not immune or indifferent to social issues. Imagine the social disintegration will take place. Imagine what will mean for social cohesion. I think leaving the Eurozone will also freeze the pace of structural changes that are required to make this country competitive again. I think if we leave the Eurozone, local, powerful interest groups, which some of the panelists have alluded before, will be able to thwart any attempt to change the business and political model of Greece once European pressure to reform comes down. It has been said that some exporters may actually benefit in the short term from exiting the euro. I would like to dispel that, because even exporters have inputs such as gasoline, which are paid in hard currency if we were to exit the euro. Moreover, given the relative small size of our export sector, it would mean such upheaval on the local market that even exporters will not be able to be immune from that upheaval. Creating an export machine takes time, and to the degree we move quickly from the euro to the drachma, we don't provide time for that transformation to take place. Unlike Argentina, which has been mentioned before, we cannot leverage the devaluation or immediately experience import substitution. The transition for most Greek businesses will be extremely painful if it is done through a euro exit. An internal depreciation within the euro achieves in time the desired competitiveness and allows businesses to adjust to the new reality with European assistance. Yes, I'll be very quick. Let me conclude by being a bit controversial. I think the dilemma is not between the drachma and the euro. If we exit the euro, we will no longer be able to service our debt, as its values in drachmas skyrockets. Rather, the choice is between a voluntary managed default within the euro, with European interim financial assistance and expertise, with European stake in our success, with ECB assistance to Greek banks, with structural aid from European authorities, versus a unilateral, messy default with a drachma that will destabilize the Greek economy, social fabric, and political system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makrides, but no thanks for this grim scenario. Now, last but indeed not least, I would like to call upon Mr. Giuseppe Giano, who is a graduate of our college and has an MSc from City University Business School. He's currently the chairman of the board of directors of EUROXX Securities here in Athens. Mr. Giano.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. It's a great pleasure. My presentation will deal mainly with the impact of the recent debt crisis on the equity markets and the consequent repercussions on the banking sector, which fully indirectly reflects any positive or negative development on the economy. To provide some perspective of the current situation, let us look a few years back in the high growth period of 2005 to 2007. During that time, the Greek economy had been growing at rates well above the EU average, credit expansion was running in high teens, wholesale funding costs were at extremely low levels, with an overall strong positive contribution to Greek banks' profitability. At the same time, Greek banks were expanding their footprint in the promising and under-leveraged neighboring countries, and the profitability outlook was the best ever, way above most of the other European banks. When the subprime crisis emerged, Greek government and banks argued that the impact on the domestic economy would be limited, while Greek banks did not hold any of the so-called toxic assets. The reason for the zero holdings was actually the fact that the Greek banks were lucky enough to enjoy high and sustainable growth from core operations, well above the alluring yields of these exotic bonds. Nevertheless, the first fears emerged in the first half of 2008 on market concerns that interbank markets would not provide easy and cheap funding as they did in the past, putting Greek banks' upcoming wholesale redemptions at risk. In October 2009, as you all know, the newly elected government announced that deficit would climb to 12.7% of GDP, more than double the previous government's estimate submitted to the EU a few weeks before. Following this development, rating agencies started a series of downward revisions of Greece's credit ratings, which at a later stage accelerated with multi-notch downgrades. This was actually the beginning of the so-called Greek debt crisis. Unlike the origins of the subprime crisis in August 2007, which involved US banks and spilled over to the real economy, the Greek crisis is fully attributed to fiscal and public sector imbalances, with repercussions on the real economy and the banking sector. Both the equity and the debt markets were negatively surprised, realizing for the first time the magnitude of the negative macro conditions in Greece. During the first half of 2010, the equity market began to focus more on the macro rather than the micro. Developments and rating agencies' actions, which were indifferent up to then, became one of the key market catalysts. At the same time, budget execution, primarily deficits, spreads, Greek government bond holdings, started to be monitored on a regular basis, and equity investors, who previously focused on corporate results, now started to discuss primarily macro outlook and fiscal figures. The agreement signed in May 2010 with the European Union, the European Central Bank and the IMF, the so-called Troika, for a 110 billion support package gave some temporary relief, especially regarding the short-term funding outlook. Nevertheless, since the first review of Greece's economic adjustment program, all involved parties started to realize that apart from the commitments to specific objectives, Greece should also promptly implement and deliver on the agreed targets. During the second half of 2010, some early signs of hope appeared, stemming from positive comments by the European officials. Despite the positive statements, market concerns continued, and in fact, they accelerated following fiscal data revisions, higher than initially anticipated recession, much worse debt dynamics, and along with continuing rating downgrades. The vote of the medium-term fiscal strategy plan in late June, along with relevant commitments for its implementation and the adoption of additional austerity measures, were supposed to send a message to the international community that Greece took the necessary decisions and it was up to the EU to provide more comfort to the country's increasing funding and solvency risk. 1 month after the voting of the MTFS and 14 months after the signing of the agreement for the first financial aid, the EU summit on July 21st decided to provide a second bailout package, 109 billion that we all know, with the involvement for the first time of the private sector. The initial market reaction was positive. Yet another time, the negative sentiment resumed due to lack of communication and clear commitments by EU top officials, concerns over the sustainability of Greek debt, and fears that the impact of the PSI would significantly erode Greek banks' capital base. As of September, the catastrophic scenarios, much worse than those prevailing before the July summit, resumed on the back of updated estimates for deeper and longer recession, higher haircut on banks' bond holdings, and significant delays of the implementation of the July decisions. What we have seen in the previous days, with many meetings and discussions at top European level, leakages for important decisions that are refuted the next day, convening of extraordinary Eurogroup and EU summit, trying to desperately resolve a complicated issue with so many involved parties, more than underline that we have reached the most critical moment since the establishment of the Eurozone. It is more than clear that since the signing of the first MOU in June 2010, both Greece and the Eurozone have entered uncharted waters, and the potential resolution of the Greek debt crisis will be a key catalyst for the future of the Eurozone. Greek banks, the successful and promising story of the previous years, are caught in the eye of the storm with extended deposit outflows, slightly negative credit expansion, and an increase in the loan impairments and non-performing loans. Ahead of the EU tomorrow, that we're all expected to see, due to reach final decisions on the Greek banks, on Greece, on the FSF leveraging, and on governance, the key takeaways and conclusions from the debt crisis, we can summarize it in 2 or 3 steps. Greece is probably a last unique opportunity to proceed to the long-awaited implementation of the required structural reforms, combat tax evasion, downsize public sector, and streamline its operations. Political cost, delays in the adoption of the required measures, and the lack of implementation and follow-up, strong resistance from vested interests are among the key reasons for the derailing of the governance program. The adjustment program, for Greece primarily, focused on short-term targets, with the main being to curb deficit by raising revenues through taxes. The resulting lower disposable income led to shrinking consumption and even deeper recession. European political leaders significantly delayed adopting all the necessary decisions and lacked to focus on the real issue, which became a European rather than a Greek debt crisis. Greek debt crisis is a unique case globally, not comparable to any other similar case in the past, lacking the tool of currency devaluation. It is also a unique case in the history of the Eurozone because 17 political leaders had to reach a unanimous agreement with so many compromises. Restoring market confidence is hard, gradual and a long-lasting process requiring strong political willingness, social consensus, commitments and ability to deliver. Until now, we have unfortunately not seen much of them. We hope that even at this last moment, the EU and the Greek government will commit to a set of solid and concrete steps to resolve the crisis and reverse the markets and the economy's negative sentiment. Thank you very much.
Before I open the floor to discussion, I would like to ask the President of the American College of Greece to perhaps say something. Yes, and what about those books? Maybe you should give the books.
Would you like me to say something relevant or irrelevant?
Whatever you will say, Mr. President, will be relevant.
Thank you very much. Well, I know that time is flying by, and indeed, even some of the people who have attended are flying. So I wanted to take the opportunity to thank our panelists for these insights, as sobering as they may be. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to present to each of the panelists something that may be of modest assistance. And that is, last week we introduced a history of the American College of Greece, dating back to 1875, written by Giles Milton, the Pulitzer Prize nominated author. Now, it may be that the circumstances that we face are unprecedented, and the answers are very difficult to discern. But I would submit that in times such as these, historical reflection is all the more necessary, even though the circumstances may have been different. So I'm hoping that in this book, each of you might find some inspiration from the values and the courage of the founders of this institution who faced some extraordinary circumstances, and through those circumstances found a path, not only to survival, but to something that really has become a splendid educational accomplishment in this institution. So we're delighted for the opportunity to be with you, even if the circumstances are so challenging, and we hope that you will receive this gift in a way that will in some way compensate you for your time and thoughtfulness today. Thank you very much.